I'm Marisa Norcross.
And I'm Dave Freund, and this is The Next Page. Marisa, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be starting a new series today.
A new series called Monuments. It's I'm excited too because what this is going to be a series, and the interesting thing about this is I have no idea how long this series is going to be. My goal in this is to use monuments that I know of or that I discover, primarily in the central New York region, but we have people throughout, the world literally listening. And today's monument certainly isn't a central New York one. But to tell the stories behind the monuments and then illustrate leadership lessons in that story. So today, and actually this is really fitting because last Friday was Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And so Monday of this week was the national holiday when banks were closed and mail didn't get delivered and kids didn't have school, and it was Dr. Martin Luther King Day. So I right away thought, this would be an interesting monument to write about because now you have never seen it, right?
I have not, no.
Okay. It was probably 5 years ago when my son Tim and I went, I think it will be 5 years this coming March. We went to Washington, and Tim had never been to Washington, but he's really and that's how bad a parent I was. Parent I was. He was 19 years old and had never been to Washington yet. But anyways, he had time. We went during his spring break from school, and I took a few days off. And he's a real history buff, as I am, and so we really spent 3 or 4 amazing days in Washington. One of the very neat things was we thought we were going to be the first group to tour the White House after it had reopened for tours, because we had like an 8:15 tour, and believe it or not, there was a 7:30 tour. So we were not the first tour, but we were the second tour once the White House reopened. And then another really neat thing about that trip was being able to, our congressman, one of his aides took us over to the Capitol building. And while we had toured the Capitol on the typical guided tours, we were given a tour by his congressional aide, which took us under the road where the congressmen walk as they're going to the Capitol building.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we get to this one spot, which was really interesting because they said, you have to take everything out of your pocket. I'm like, what? She said, everything. Wallets, cell phones, got to leave it right here. So we did. And next thing you know, they walked through the door, and we literally walked in the front of the House chamber, and you don't realize it till you get in there. And oh my goodness, this is where you see the State of the Union being done. But so it was kind of a neat thing for somebody that's as into history as I am. But what we did one evening was we decided to walk to the mall and just start looking at monuments at night. And we were walking along, and it's beautiful at night. I've got some really neat pictures of, the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument and looking down toward the Capitol. But all of a sudden, I made this one turn in between these stones. And there on the one side of this stack of granite boulders is the monument to Dr. King. And it was startling in how massive it is. I think it's 30 feet tall.
That's what I read.
Yeah, and this granite, the way it's illuminated, it looks white.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this amazing image coming out of the monument, but it's not finished. Like, because I actually have a picture of it up that I took up on my iPad right here. And so you see, his head and his shoulders, and you see, right down to what might be his knees. And then his back and where would be his, his shins and feet is still just granite. And he has this look on his face like he's pondering off into the future. His arms are crossed, and in his left hand is what my guess would be the speech that he gave, the I Have a Dream speech, rolled up. And it was so striking And as I looked at the monument, I was trying to think, so what does the monument tell us? First of all, it's massive. And he looks so strong in the image, but it's not finished. And what I thought about that was, and this may be the reason, it may not, I didn't look it up. The monument isn't finished because his mission hasn't finished yet. His vision hasn't been complete. And that's one of the things we need to think about monuments. So, why would I talk about monuments? Monuments, certainly you don't build monuments for perfect people because there are no perfect. But monuments are there to remind us of what was and to encourage us to strive on to complete whatever that lesson was. And so every monument, like I said at the beginning, every monument that I talk about, I'm going to pull a leadership lesson out of. Mm-hmm. So what's the leadership lesson out of Dr. King's? There's a quote that I want to read that Andy Stanley wrote. Andy Stanley wrote a book called Visioneering. And in his book, he said this: a vision is a clear mental picture of what could be, fueled by the conviction of what should be. I'm going to read that again. A vision is a clear mental picture of what could be, fueled by the conviction of what should be. Dr. King was a master at that. He was a master at casting a vision with a compelling reason why his vision should be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So when you, now is when I ask the questions that I didn't tell you I was going to ask, because I don't think about them ahead of time. So when you were growing up, what did you know about Dr. King?
We studied Dr. King and his civil rights movement and his work in school for sure. Mm-hmm. One thing that I think I wish would have been further emphasized, I think, you touched on it earlier, like it's a holiday, it's a bank holiday, it's a school holiday.
Yeah.
But it's really not. It's a day of remembrance.
Right.
And that's where I think there's the disconnect.
Yep.
We spent a lot of time. I remember even in college, I can't remember what class I was taking, but studying him and his work, and watched movies and read about him, and but I think the part that was missing was finishing out or continuing on his legacy and that mission and that vision. Right. And I really like the leadership lesson that you pulled from this, because I think when looking at vision, we stop at that first half, right?
Right.
Our vision is a clear mental picture of what could be.
Yep.
Comma, fueled by the conviction of what should be. Exactly. And that's the part that I think gets lost or forgotten.
Right.
And now as an adult, think as a kid, you can't process this as well, but as an adult, you certainly can. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And I really like it. We did not Google why the monument was unfinished, but I do kind of like the conclusion that you've drawn that his work has not yet been finished.
Right.
And that's really powerful. And I wish I had seen this monument. I think the last time I was in Washington, D.C. was the year before this was finished. So, okay. So I haven't even been there, but it looks, it is spectacular.
It is. And when I first saw it, it was like, why didn't they finish it? But then the more a good monument will do this. A good monument will convey much more than just we're remembering this person. Mm-hmm. A good, if I'm thinking about, and I haven't given any thought to, but if I think about the Lincoln Memorial, what's behind it? We know it was Lincoln. Lincoln was an amazing president, maybe the greatest president we ever had, in terms of what he accomplished. But there is still this massive edifice, if I want to call it that is to his ideals, not just the man. And with Dr. King, it's like, yes, this is a huge monument, but it's not finished because we need to continue his work and his vision. And so Simon Sinek one time said, he calls it the school bus test. He said, you will know that you have truly communicated your vision when, if you got run over by a school bus, I know that sounds morbid, and you were killed, your team would report back to work the following day with the same passion to pursue your vision. Mm-hmm. Then you know you've cast your vision well.
Right. I think the key there is the same passion, not necessarily an understanding of.
Right. But there's that internal drive.
Yes.
To move it forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say that Dr. King was able to convey the why it should be, I want to just use, his most famous speech, probably, that anybody, if I said, what's Dr. King's famous speech, they'd say, I have a dream. Mm-hmm. Which was true. I think it probably is. It's probably one of the most famous speeches. I think it rivals up there with the Gettysburg Address, mm-hmm. In being a very pivotal speech. And I asked someone this question. I said, do you think I'm overstating it to say that Dr. King was the greatest vision caster in the history of our country? And the person that I spoke to said, I don't think that's overstating it at all. He's in the same category with Lincoln. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge statement, because Lincoln was, casting this vision about a unified nation and literally, and also being able to cast why. So if we think about the I Have a Dream speech, he starts out by connecting to the past when he uses some phrases like, we sit in the shadow of the symbolic shadow we stand today is Lincoln's. Okay, so he's there, he's talking about Lincoln. And then he references the founding fathers and the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. So he's not saying, hey, I have an idea that we need to have civil rights in this country. He is saying this country was founded on a principle that all men are created equal. And so he brings anybody that heard it or read it would be drawn back to the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. In his speech, he also references the Constitution. And then another thing that he does that is really so neat is he begins to recite phrases from the song all the elementary school kids learned when I was in elementary school, My Country 'Tis of Thee. So he's not giving you something new here. He's going back to what was and what's well established with these words. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountain side, let freedom ring. So now we're all in tune with the song. And then he goes on to talk about, well, where should freedom ring from? And he literally starts talking about the hills of New Hampshire. He goes to the mountains of New York. He goes to the Alleghenies. He basically takes you from east to west and north to south, talking about snow-capped mountains of Colorado. And he's drawing everybody in to his vision with this compelling reason that it absolutely should be. Now, there's something else in the monument that struck me as I was going back through his I Have a Dream speech. There is a phrase in his 1963 speech that says, "Hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope." And I'm just wondering, did the artist that conceptualized the monument take that phrase to create the monument? Mm-hmm. Because clearly hewn out of that stone is the image of hope. Because really that's what Dr. King was most, yes, he was a civil rights leader, and he was all about peaceful protest. Sadly, he was assassinated and ended up dying far too young. But his speeches were so hopeful. Just the way this one here, I have a dream. And it was that phrase continually, I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. And you all wanted to have that dream with him. That's the leadership piece that I got from Dr. King. And I was kind of glad to be able to see the monument because it's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think we can do, perhaps in our own circles, to move away from, okay, this is a day, because really this Martin Luther King Day was like an extra day off school 2 weeks after school began in January.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I learned about Dr. King, but we didn't hear the why enough. So I'm wondering, what can we do to help reshape the concept of the day? Because I love how you said it should be a day of remembrance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a typical response from me, but I think we can't necessarily rely on our schools to do this. It's for kids. I think for parents to talk to their kids about Dr. King and his work is probably the most meaningful way to handle it. I think about it. If you do, if your kids do have the day off from school or did, that's an opportunity to use that time to teach them and to talk to them about his work and the work that is still to be done.
Yes, because there's much work left.
There's much work left to be done. And while what they study in school is useful information, it's more of a history lesson than something to spark progress. So I think it's something that would start in the home, and
agreed. Yep.
Not just looking at it as a long weekend. Right. And I think a lot of people are talking about this now for many of these quote bank holidays. Mm-hmm. And retailers have come under fire because they use it as an opportunity to have a sale. Sure. Right. And it's really important that we don't let the influences of society allow us to forget what the day really is.
Perfect. And that's the way I've been talking about the Change Your World book that's coming out, and believe it or not, I got my book on Saturday. FedEx dropped it off. No, yesterday, or maybe it was Friday. I don't know. FedEx dropped it off. But you change your world one person at a time. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a mass movement. And I love how you said, I teach my kids what it really means. And to, we see the same thing when we get to Memorial Day, when we just think, Memorial Day is the kickoff to summer. No, not really. Mm-hmm. Not. Day to remember those that paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have freedom. And, we're going to have a President's Day sale. Well, wait a minute. Whose birthdays do we commemorate? Mm-hmm. And I like how you said a remembrance. That maybe we need to be much more intentional about remembering. And I guess it fits perfect with the monument. So maybe this needs to be the theme, Marisa, that we have as we do the monument series. This is really a series about remembrance. Mm-hmm. Not that we long for the past, but that we use the past as an anchor and a foothold to move to a better future. That's kind of the way I think. Mm-hmm. So a little bit shorter than normal, but that's okay because people can spend the rest of the time thinking about, what is their recollection, Dr. King. Everybody should just go do a YouTube search. Quick YouTube search, I have a dream speech. And you will be amazed at the power that this man had. He could speak and really inspire people and give us not just the vision of what could be, but the reason why it should. Mm-hmm. Anything exciting happening in your family?
Well, we're still waiting for some snow to do some of the things on our bucket list. it's been a bit strange, really.
It has.
But, I don't really mind.
Yeah, in one hand, I'm like, oh, I really love the snow. And then the other hand, it's like, oh, I'm kind of okay with this right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to get much worse than this, so.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a feeling it will come. The window that I look out of here in my office at home, I remember last winter, the entire window well being covered with snow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big window well. And it was just, there must have been, I think it might have been one of our storms where we got like 20-some inches of snow. And it just about closed it off. So I have a feeling we may still get that before we get to spring.
There's still plenty of time.
There is still plenty of time. It really is only the middle of January.
Mm-hmm.
So next week, let's see. How do I introduce next? How about this? His name was William.
Okay. Keep us guessing.
And we'll leave it at that. All right. So with that, I'm Dave Freund.
I'm Marisa Norcross.
And this was The Next Page.